When it comes to getting children to catch up on lost learning time from the pandemic, the government has a 3Ts strategy: extra time, teaching and tutoring. That's according to a leaked document seen by The Times that sets out £15 billion worth of measures. Our political correspondent Charlotte Ivers explains.
This is a £15 billion package that is being pitched by the report, and the headline of it is that extra half an hour per day on the school day, so a minimum of a 35-hour week for school children. And then as well, some of the detail involves half a million extra teachers getting extra training, and then also 5 million pupils getting extra tutoring. So that will be targeted tutoring for the pupils who have missed out the most over the course of the pandemic.
Tom Richmond is director of the EDSK think tank and former government advisor for the Department for Education to Michael Gove and Nicky Morgan, of course. Good morning to you, Tom.
Good morning.
Now, these proposals, we're talking about children in England, first of all. Clearly something had to happen because we are hearing about this kind of attainment gap, this learning gap. Do you think this is the right approach?
Yeah, well, I mean, first and foremost, it is very encouraging to see that we have got Sir Kevan Collins, who was appointed by the government to lead the education recovery efforts. He realises this is not going to be a problem that's solved by next summer. The government have already announced almost £2 billion worth of support for next year, but I'm really pleased to see that he's thinking much further than that, because we know that the scale of the learning loss for a lot of pupils has been so significant. There was a study from Stanford University just a few weeks ago which said that the learning losses for pupils from less educated homes could be up to 60% larger than to students from the more educated homes. And unless we really put some investment into that, we're simply not going to make a dent in that problem.
Can you just explain, because we are talking, as you say, about 2022 and beyond here, how does it work in terms of, I mean, the learning that was lost was lost mainly last year and a little bit of this year. So how does introducing half an hour extra potentially to a school day in 2022 help you get back what you lost last year?
So obviously one of the biggest concerns around learning loss is going to be around some of those really vital skills. So we're talking about English skills, we're talking about maths, potentially science as well. And so those are skills which need to be incrementally built over a very long period of time. And if we've simply lost months, potentially 15 months worth of learning, at least to some degree, then clearly we've got to rapidly find extra ways to get more learning time in place so that we can get those core skills across to pupils, particularly at primary level, because we know if pupils don't acquire those skills by the end of primary school, it just gets more and more difficult to get those skills across as they go into secondary and even into the later years of secondary education. So I think Sir Kevan is right to say that we just need to increase the quantum of time that we have, but he's also rightly putting a focus on the quality of support, because that's just going to be as important, I suspect, as the quantity overall.
Now, of course, you need to get parents and teachers on side. So how likely do you think parents and teachers would be to back this?
Well, clearly it's a difficult situation in the sense that every time you put some extra provision in place, we've got to get high quality staff in place to put that provision across to pupils. There's no point saying we'd like to put, several hours or a week or over a whole year in place without the high quality staff. So for early years education, for primary schools and secondary schools, it's really good, again, that Sir Kevan is talking about extra training for teachers, because if we want to get, say, high quality tuition programs in place, which is exactly what he wants to do for the next 3 or 4 years, well, clearly we're going to need to fund teachers to deliver that, because what we haven't got the time to do necessarily is put the whole teaching profession to one side and train a whole new workforce. We simply don't have the capacity to do that. So he's right to say, let's train teachers better. Let's potentially get more money into the most disadvantaged schools so they can get additional support. And over time, and hopefully in the next few months, we can really start to build some good capacity. But it's not going to happen without very significant investment.
Well, yes, on that point, the report cost the measures at $15 billion. The Treasury is thought to be offering only $1.5 billion so far. Presumably that will be resolved, will it?
Yes, so I mean the Treasury's perspective, and I have some sympathy with this, which is that we are expecting a big spending review in the autumn across all government departments, which will set out their plans for the next 3 years. But of course, the Department for Education is now pushing for something much sooner than the autumn, and so the Treasury are sort of caught in a, well, hold on a second, we're looking at all government departments in the round in the autumn. Can we make a decision right now? And so the policy pressure, I think, is coming from Number 10 and the Department for Education to say we need to get this package finalised sooner rather than later. And I'm sure Sir Kevin Collins would want the package finalised sooner rather than later. But I think Treasury is just a little bit hesitant because there's so many other things that the government wants to spend on education. For example, more money for further education colleges, which again has already been pushed by the government very hard to try and make decisions about the COVID recovery package before we finalised how much money there's going to be for colleges and universities later on in the year. That's where they're just becoming a little bit unstuck. So I don't think there's any lack of motivation in the government at all. And I think Sir Kevin Collins, it sounds like he's getting a fairly receptive audience, particularly from Number 10 Downing Street, but we just haven't got the final details yet. So I think everyone's keeping their fingers crossed that we can get something like the kind of scale that Sir Kevin's talking about.
Tom, thank you very much. That is Tom Richmond, who's director of the EDSK think tank and a former advisor to the Department of Education.